Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start the class with some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Varenayam, Vargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Asto Ma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityurma Amritam Gamya. Om Sahnavavatu Sahnabhunaktu Saviryam Karvave Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's open our Uddhava Gita books, page number 269. Today we're going to start chapter 9. Lord Krishna's description of mystic yoga perfections. Summary of the chapter. Just a little bit, it's not a long summary in this chapter. This chapter describes the 8 primary and 10 secondary mystic perfections. These mystic perfections are developed by fixing one's mind in yoga, but they are ultimately detrimental to the achievement of Lord Vishnu's lotus feet. Okay, so that means these are the siddhis. If we make siddhis our goal, we don't reach the ultimate goal. And this is exactly what Rishi Patanjali said in the Yoga Darshan. Being asked by Uddhava, Lord Shri Krishna describes the 18 mystic perfections, their characteristics, and what type of meditation is to be practiced for the attainment of each one. The Lord concludes by saying, for one who desires to render pure devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the attainment of these mystic powers is simply a waste of time because they are impediments to the worship of the Supreme Lord. So the goal of a Bhagat is to develop more love for God, not love for these powers. All these mystic perfections are automatically offered to a pure devotee, but he does not accept them unless employed in the devotional service of the Lord. These mystic perfections have no value. A devotee simply sees that the Supreme Lord is present everywhere, both externally and internally, and depends completely upon him. So let's start with verse number 1. Lord Krishna is saying, Jitendriyasya he yuktasya he jit shwasasya yoginah mei dharyatam chet apati tishtantihi siddhyah. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Uddhava, when a yogi has controlled his senses, conquered his breathing process, steadied his mind, and concentrated his mind on me, then all mystic perfections automatically appear to him. Because these siddhis, they are at the feet of Lord. So why wouldn't a Bhagat get these siddhis when Bhagat is totally surrendered to God? There are 8 primary mystic yoga perfections, beginning with the Anima Siddhi, and then 10 secondary yoga perfections. In this chapter, Lord Krishna will explain that these yoga siddhis are stumbling blocks on the path of Krishna consciousness. Stumbling block. Okay, so they are impediments on the path of perfection. But they come. They do come. So, but we have to not even smile at them. Just just think that they are there, that's fine. Now Uddhava says in verse number 2, Kaya dharnaya kasvit katham vasiddhir achyut kati vasiddhyo bruhi yoginam siddho do bhavan. Shri Uddhava said, my dear Lord Achyut. See, this is the name for Lord Krishna. Another name, right? He has many, many names. Achyut. You alone are the bestower of all types of mystic perfections. Kindly tell me, by what process can the mystic perfections be achieved? How many types of mystic perfections are there? and what is the nature of each mystic perfection. The word swit is employed while inquiring. So whenever you want to ask something, swit. So Lord Krishna says, Siddhyo ashtadash proktah dharna yog par gaye tasam ashtau mat pradhanah dashev gun hetava. The Supreme Lord said, the sages who are masters of yoga have declared that there are 18 kinds of siddhi, mystic perfection, and dharna, meditation. Among these, 8 are primary, being sheltered in me, and 10 are secondary, appearing from the material mode of goodness. So material mode means the Prakriti. So there are 18 kinds of dharna as well. The Supreme Lord is the shelter of the 8 primary dharnas because they have been manifested from his internal potency and are thus transcendental. The other 10 meditations are mundane, being born from the material mode of goodness. Among the 18 kinds of perfection, 8 are transcendental and 10 are within the jurisdiction of the material modes of nature. So that means some of them are at a higher level and some are at a lower level. The 8 siddhis are anima, lagima, mahima, prapti, prakamya, ishtita, vashishtha, and kam vasayeta. Among them, the first 3 pertain to the body, the 4th pertain to the senses, and the last 4 pertain to nature. The 10 minor perfections are anurmritva, dura shravana, dura darshana, ichha rupaha, dehargati, ichhanurupa, akar grahana, पर काया प्रवेश स्वेच्छा मृत्यु देव क्रीड़ा दर्शन संकल्पिता पदार्थ प्राप्ति and अपदार्थ आज्ञा, and they are all mundane. So now in the next few verses there will be explanation of these siddhis. Verse number 4 and 5, they are together. Anima, Mahima, Murte, Lagima, Praptir, Indriye, Prakamyam, Shrut, Drishteshu, Shakti, Prernam, Ishitaha, Guneshv, Asangoho, Vashitaha, Yat, Kamach, Tad Vashyati, Etame Siddhya Somya, Ashtav, Otpatikaha, Mataha. Anima, becoming smaller than the smallest. See, this word comes from Anu. Anima, smaller than the smallest. Mahima, becoming greater than the greatest. And we saw these siddhis when we study our scriptures. Hanumanji, he could become very small also, and he could become very big also. He could make himself very heavy also and very light also. These are the siddhis. That's why he said that these siddhis, when we use it to do God's work, it's okay. But when we try to use these siddhis for our own benefit, that's not okay. Okay? So Anima becoming smaller than the smallest, Mahima becoming greater than the greatest, and Laghima becoming lighter than the lightest are mystic perfections by which one transforms one's body. So these 3 got to do with the body. Making our own body big or small or very light. Prapti Siddhi, by which one acquires whatever one desires. Prapti is related to the senses. Prakamya Siddhi enables one to experience any enjoyable object in this world and in the next. Next means after this life. Ishta Siddhi enables one to manipulate the subpotencies of Maya. Ishta. Vashishta Siddhi enables one to be unimpeded by the three modes of nature, Satvikta, Rajasikta, Tamsikta. Kam avashtyaha siddhi enables one to obtain anything he may desire. My dear Uddhav, these 8 siddhis are considered as naturally existing and unexcelled within this world. So among these 8 mystic perfections, Anima, Mahima and Lagma are related to the body. Prapti Siddhi is related to the senses because by utilizing the senses, one can acquire anything. Prakamya Siddhi awards one the power to enjoy objects that one may have heard about but cannot see, such as something buried underground. Like something which you cannot see, but you still know and you can obtain it. By the Ishta Siddhi, one can manipulate the sub-potencies of nature. By the Vishishta Siddhi, one can bring others under one's control and keep oneself beyond the influence of the three modes of material nature. Kam Avasthya Siddhi gives one the maximum power of control, acquisition, and enjoyment. These 8 mystic perfections are certainly grand accomplishments because they originally existed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are the powers of God. Because the whole Maya is a servant of God. He is Maya Adhyaksha. He is the one who created Maya, so Maya is under his domain. So when a Bhagat becomes totally surrendered to God, of course, these powers, they are servants to that kind of a devotee. Now, verse number 6 and 7, they go together. Anurmimatvam dehe asmin dur shravan darshanam manojava kam rupam parkay parveshnam swachand mrityur devanam sah kridano darshanam yatha sankalp samsiddhir agya prati hatagati. The 10 secondary mystic siddhis produced from the mode of material nature are the power to free oneself from hunger and thirst, to hear and see things happening in a distant place, to move one's body at the speed of the mind, to assume any form one desires, to enter the bodies of others, to die according to one's will, to witness the pastimes of the demigods with the apsaras, to act however one desires, and to give orders whose fulfillment is unimpeded. The 10 secondary mystic perfections are herein described. These powers award one freedom from the 6 urges of the bodies, such as hunger and thirst, seeing and hearing what is happening at a distant place, moving the body at the speed of the mind, assuming the form of one's choice, witnessing the pleasure pastimes of the demigods and celestial women, attaining whatever one desires, and the carrying out of one's orders without impediment. So more and more powers. But again, remember, Bhagat does not do the bhakti or the sadhana to attain these powers. Powers do come, but don't pay much attention to these powers. Otherwise, it's a slippery slope. Very easily we can slide down on this path. Number 8 and 9. Trikal gyatvam dvand parichit dvi abhigyata aganya hai arkambhu vishadina pratishtham boho prajya. एताश्चो देशतः प्रोक्तः योग धारण सिद्धिया यया धारण्यः यास्याद यथा वस्यान निबोध में. The power to know past, present, and future. Tolerance of dualities, such as heat and cold. To know others' minds, checking the influence of fire, sun, water, poison, and so on, and to remain undefeated by others. These constitute 5 perfections attained by the practice of yoga and meditations. I have simply listed them here, giving their names and characteristics. Now please hear from me about how one attains a particular siddhi by performing a specific meditation. The following are considered to be insignificant siddhis: knowing the past, present, and future, not becoming overwhelmed by the dualities, such as heat and cold, and checking the influence of fire, sun, poison, and so on. So knowledge of past, present, and future, being undisturbed by heat and cold, understanding the intentions of others, neutralization of the powers of fire, the sun, water, poison, and so on, and to be unconquerable. These are 5 insignificant perfections. So that means these are the lower kind. Previously, what he mentioned, those were higher level. Verse number 10. Bhut suksham atmani mai tan matra dharyen mana animanam avapnoti tan matro pachkomam. One who fixes his mind on me in my atomic form, which pervades all subtle elements, worshipping that form alone, attains the mystic perfection known as anima siddhi. So that means God is in every atom. Wherever we see, God is there. So when we see God everywhere, not just only one form, chosen form, but everywhere. Because actually there's no place without God. So he says a person who can do this fixes the mind on God everywhere, in every atom. The Supreme Lord possesses a tiny form whereby he resides within the atoms and atomic particles. One who can concentrate his mind on the super soul can obtain the mystic power called anima, which enables one to enter within any material object. The Supreme Lord has covered the godless living entities with gross and subtle material designations made of the illusory energy. If one desires to free his mind from the gross material designations, then he must meditate on the subtle form of the Lord. Because we are concentrating always on the grosser part. Even when we look at the God's form, we are looking at which material it's made up of. How many ornaments the God is wearing. Sure, that is beautiful, but we got to look at it, that God within that form. And then expand that vision, God in every form. Okay? So if one desires to free his mind from the gross material designations, then he must meditate on the subtle form of the Lord. Subtle means the sukshma. The eyes cannot see, but mind can perceive. Because mind is a subtle part of our existence. So that's why the bhavana has to be there. Those who worship the Lord as he is situated within the subtle forms of sense objects can achieve the anima siddhi. So for that, we need to practice. Because so far we have been practicing to see just with these physical eyes. Whatever physically present in front of us, and constantly we just are under the sway of the duality. I like this, I don't like this. This is my favorite, this is not favorite. But when we start seeing God in the subtlety, then you rise above the duality. Verse number 11. Mahat tattva atmanihi mai yatha sansthaṁ manodadat mehimanam avapnoti bhutanam cha prithak prithak. One who concentrates his mind on the Lord as he is situated in the Mahat Tattva. Mahat. Mahat means great. Mahat. As the super soul of the total material elements can obtain the mystic perfection called Mahima. Okay. So smallest of the smallest and the greatest of the greatest. By absorbing the mind in the existence of each material element, one can obtain their potencies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is in one sense non-different from the material creation. Considering this, one can meditate upon the Mahat Tattva as a subtle manifestation of the Lord's inferior potency. When one has actually realized that the universe is non-different from the Lord, he obtains the mystic perfection known as Mahima Siddhi. When one can realize the Lord's presence within each of the material elements, he obtains their potency. One who meditates upon the Lord as the supreme soul of the total material existence, or Mahat Tattva, can attain the mystic perfection called Mahima Siddhi. By realizing how the Mahat Tattva is not different from the Supreme Lord, being the expansion of his energy, one can experience his presence within each of the elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. This awards one the Siddhi of Mahima. So bigger than the biggest and the smallest than the smallest. Whatever you focus on, remember that it's God and God alone. Number 12. Parmanu mayo chittam bhuta nam may ranjyan kal suksham arthatam yogi lakhimanam avapniyat. By fixing the mind on me, as I am situated within everything, and thus the essence of the atomic constituents of the material elements, a yogi can attain the mystic perfection called Laghima, which enables him to become as light as an atom. Laghima. Call or time is the form of the Lord that moves the material world. The 5 gross elements are composed of atoms, and atomic particles are a subtle manifestation of the movements of time. The personality of Godhead is more subtle than time, and it is he who expands to become the time factor. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna said, I am the Kal also, the time factor. By understanding this, one obtains the mystic power known as Laghima Siddhi, whereby he can become lighter than the lightest. If the yogi fixes his mind in meditation on the subtle characteristics of the material elements, understanding them to be energetic expansions of the Supreme Lord, he can attain the Laghima Siddhi. Those who are not devoted to the Supreme Lord will only achieve an illusory fragment of this mystic potency. Verse number 13. Dharyanmai aham tattve mano vekarikehe akhilam sarv indriya nam atmtvam praptim prapnoti manmana. One who meditates on me as situated within the elements of false ego, as generated from the mode of goodness, attains the siddhi called prapti, by which one gains mastery over everyone's senses. The yogi who fixes his mind on the Lord as he is situated within the false ego can attain the power whereby he can acquire any object he desires. By reviving one's relationship with the absolute personality of Godhead, all of one's senses become engaged in the service of the master of the senses. This is the essence of understanding the mystic perfection called prapti. Those who try to attain mystic powers without meditating on the Supreme Lord are awarded a mere reflection of these siddhis. Because they are not in union with the Lord through devotion, they cannot partake of his mystic potencies, which are of cosmic proportions and thus must be satisfied with mere reflections of those powers. So this false ego he's talking about, it's just a reflection. It's not the reality. Number 14. Mahatyehe atmanim yasutre dharyen may manasam prakamye parmeshtam me vindate vyaktam janmana. This is number 14. One who concentrates his mind on me as the super soul of that aspect of the Mahat Tattva that manifests the wheel of Karam obtains from me, who is beyond material perception, the mystic perfection called Prakamya. The aspect of the Mahat Tattva that produces the cycle of action and reaction is herein referred to as Sutra. See, Sutre Dharya. By fixing meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the soul of the Mahat Tattva, one can achieve the most excellent perfection called Prakamya. This opulence is especially employed by Brahma. Avyakta Janmana indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears from the Avyakta. Avyakta means unmanifested, or the spiritual sky, or that his birth is avyakta, beyond the perception of material senses. So avyakta means unmanifested, you really cannot understand with the senses. Those who mistakenly consider the Mahat Tattva to be more important than Hiranyagarbha claim to have achieved the mystic perfection called Prakamya. Those who have actually attained Prakamya Siddhi accept Hiranyagarbha as the worshipable Lord of the Mahat Tattva, lying on the ocean of milk. And again, Hiranyagarbha, that's a golden egg, say, complete the total man and buddhi, that is Hiranyagarbha. Verse number 15. Vishnotra adhikshvehe chitam dharyet kal vigrahe sa ishitvam avapnoti kshetragye kshetra chodnama. One who meditates on my form as Lord Vishnu, the super soul, the personification of time and the controller of the three modes of material nature, attains the siddhi called Ishtva, by which he can control the material bodies of others along with their designations. The illusory energy of the Lord, which consists of the three modes of material nature, is under the control of time. By meditating on this form of the Supreme Lord, one can obtain the Ishtva Siddhi. This Siddhi enables one to exert his influence over the bodies of other conditioned souls. So like a Ishtva. The Supreme Lord's illusory potency consists of three modes of material nature, and it works fully under the supervision of time, which has also emanated from him. The super soul of the manifested material elements is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Liberated souls absorbed in meditation upon the super soul attain the Ishitva Siddhi without separate endeavor. Those who consider the form of the Lord to be a manifestation of the three modes of material nature, and thus a product of matter under the control of eternal time, and consider themselves to be one in identity with the super soul, are understood to be bereft of all knowledge. Because of this, they cannot discriminate between the Mayadhish Lord and Maya Vash Jeva. See, Lord is Maya Dhish, like a lord of this Maya, and Maya Vash are us Jeeves. We are under the grip of the Maya. The hopes of such persons to master the Ishitva Siddhi is simply another manifestation of illusion. Okay, so we got to have a full understanding why we are doing it, what are we doing it. Otherwise, we are under the grip of the illusion, he says. Number 16. Narayane Turiyake Bhagwach Shabdite Manomay Adat Yogi Mad Dharma Vashitam Iyat. A yogi who meditates on my form of Narayana, who is full of 6 opulences, and who is fully transcendental, becomes endowed with my nature and thus achieves the Vashishta Siddhi. Here the word Turiya, or the 4th dimension, refers to the personality of Godhead, who is beyond the influence of the 3 modes of material nature. He is known as Lord Narayan and possesses all 6 opulences in full. By fixing one's mind on him, one can attain the mystic perfection called Vashishta. The Lord is known as Bhagwan, or the possessor of unlimited opulences, principally wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. So these are the 6 powers of Bhagwan. Okay? Wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, renunciation. When a yogi realizes that all the objects of this world have a relationship of service with the Supreme Lord, he surpasses materialistic conceptions such as length, breadth, height, and so on, and becomes situated in transcendency. This is the platform of knowledge of one's eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. While situated on the transcendental platform, such a yogi controls his senses, mind, and speech, and thus attains the siddhi known as Vashishta. It's like a Vash karna, Vashishta. Those who are servants of their bodily urges and thus come under the control of sense objects, even though they may advertise themselves as liberated souls, can never attain the Vashishta Siddhi. Let's do one more and then we'll stop. Nirgune Brahmani Mai Dharyan Vishdam Muna Paramanandam Apnoti Yatra Kamo Avasiyate. One who meditated upon the impersonal Brahman, which is a partial manifestation of the absolute truth, will attain happiness beyond material conception, and all his desires will be fulfilled. Merging into the existence of Brahman is possible only when all material desires have ceased. Because as long as we have any material desire, we cannot absorb totally into Brahman. Because those desires keep us away. When a conditioned living entity comes in contact with the 3 modes of material nature, he exhibits various kinds of material desires. When the conditioned soul, and conditioned soul, you all know that Jivatma, engages in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of all transcendental qualities, and who is situated beyond the modes of material nature, then all his material desires are vanquished. So all. Remember that. So not just only the tamasic and the rajasic, but the sattvic also. All desires got to dissolve. Just as fog is dispelled as soon as the sun rises. This calm avasyata siddhi is obtained when one dovetails all his desires in the service of the eternal Kamdev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So continuation of this we'll see the other siddhis also, which he mentioned in the beginning of this chapter. But we stop it over here today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.